right, everyone. Welcome once again. It is Friday, and it is the Manufacturing E-commerce Success Series. I'm one of your co-hosts, Damon Pistolka, and this beautiful man over here is Kurt Anderson, my brother from another mother on the East Coast, where I'm on the West. Take it away, Kurt.
Hey, guys. Happy Friday, man. Damon, I don't know.
I can't believe this.
I don't know what you and I did in a previous life, but man, it must have been because it wasn't this life that deserved the guest today, man. It was not this life that deserved it. So, Damon, we have the one, the only. We have Dorie Clark in the house. Dorie, happy Friday. How are you, my friend?
Kurt, Damon, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here with you guys.
Oh, this is such an absolute honor. So, guys, drop us a note. Let us know you're there. First off, we have Dorie Clark. If you're not familiar with Dorie and not sure where you've been hiding for the past whatever it's been, here we got John Baglino join us today. Dan Bigger is here. So, guys, let us know that you're here. Give Dorie a shout out. So, guys, if you're not familiar with Dorie, you can't connect with her on LinkedIn because she has like 18 million followers and connections, but you can certainly follow her. And boy, you will thank Damon and I for doing so. So she has all sorts of things we're going to talk about. She has multiple books, Reinventing You, Entrepreneurial You. I'm going to go back in time, Stand Out. We've got The Long Game. Grab those books, Dorie. You know, and I've got your book right here on my phone. I'm an avid, that was my daughter, but I'm an avid fan of yours, of course. You are a podcaster. You are a professor. You have a weekly Newsweek show, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? You're at Duke University as a professor, Harvard Business Review, FastCompany, Inc., Forbes. I mean, dude, what an underachiever, Damon. I don't know about it. Dorie, how are you? Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world right now.
I'm rocking and rolling. Thank you so much. Yes, these days I'm splitting my time between Miami and New York, and I'm up in New York for the summer. So just kind of maxing out and enjoying it. I was working a little bit this morning, and early this afternoon, I'm very excited because I am returning to something that I have not done for many months. It was my great COVID indulgence, which is taking ping pong lessons. So I'll be doing that later today.
That's awesome.
We have to break that out in the show. Can you show it? I've been trying to work on my backhand, so maybe we can.
Yeah. It's sort of like, you want to just kind of lightly scuff it. It's like sort of spinning it, and then the reverse, the backhand. It's kind of like you're flinging a frisbee.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, hey, we may have to work on that out maybe at the end of the program today. But Dorie, you and I have a nice little connection. One of a person that I love dearly, my mother. She was at Smith College, I believe you were, and we found out that you missed Mom by a year. She went in a non-traditional age. Smith is an amazing, wonderful all women's college, great elite university college rather. And you were there, and you guys just missed each other. But Smith College, Harvard master's degree in theology, I believe. Let's take, such a monster, massive success. And Damon, I didn't even mention like top business thinker, Marshall Goldsmith, #1 coach, all these other accolades that we're going to get into. But Dorie, as we go back in time, you like to share that you grew up in North Carolina. As a little girl in North Carolina, I love to ask you, you are such an amazing rock star. Who was your hero growing up? Who led to this monster success? Who was your hero growing up?
That is easy, Kurt. The answer is James Bond.
Nice. Perfect answer. I thought that was going to be your.
Absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a super sexy, hyper competent spy? That's really what I've spent most of my life aspiring to be.
All right.
James Bond. That's like Damon. We haven't had that answer before.
No, we have not.
So that James Bond was your inspiration for all these books, all these accolades, everything that you've accomplished. Now, which James Bond? Can I ask? Did you have one?
Yeah, well, I grew up with Roger Moore, of course, and so that was where I sort of fixated. I fully admit, with the wisdom of adulthood, that there are some, challenges around Roger Moore. he may not have been the best Bond if you did not grow up with James Bond.
That's right.
But I do have a real soft spot for him in my heart.
Well, he was certainly a dynamo, that's for sure. I had a soft spot for Sean Connery myself, being another Bond. And so, all right, that's a fantastic answer. So we want to talk today about The Long Game. So again, guys, if you're just joining us here today, you want to check out Dorie's amazing, incredible books. Let's talk about The Long Game. So our client base, our the folks that we're targeting, manufacturers, Dorie. So, we have individuals looking at things from a long game perspective, and groups, organizations. I know you speak to different trade associations, different organizations based around manufacturing. Let's get into what are some tips, strategies, advice that you have for manufacturers playing the long game?
Yeah, absolutely, Kurt. So, ultimately, the challenge that all of us face, and it was more acute than normal during COVID,
Mhm.
is we understand evolutionarily. I mean, every human likes things rapidly, right? We're wired that way. If we have a choice between something now and something in the future, well, now sounds pretty good. But it is also true that there are a lot of things that no matter how hard we work, no matter how much we want them, they just do take time. You can't snap your fingers and make them happen. And if you want them to happen at all, you have to be taking methodical steps now to ensure that they're ready in the future. And I think, manufacturers by and large actually understand this much better than most other people. I mean, no manufacturing facility, for instance, no manufacturing capacity is built overnight. You have to be thoughtful about planning that out and taking the steps now so that you're understanding, well, what do we need to be able to do a year from now? What do we need to be able to do 5 years from now, and do what's necessary? But it's a constant struggle that we have to balance those things. And I think something we often forget, and with the long game, I really strove to try to remind individual executives and individual professionals of it, is the same things that we're doing for our business. The forecasting, the working backwards, the thinking, okay, what do I need to do today so that my business can be successful in 2030 or whatever it is? We need to be doing that for our own individual careers as well, and apply those same lenses to our own professional lives.
Right. Man, I absolutely love that. We've got some people.
Yeah.
Alicia is here today. We've got Barbara here.
John, we got
John,
Dan,
we've got Paul.
Paul,
Kishay is here today.
Alicia, Barbara.
So, hey,
yeah.
so now Alicia, she was actually on our, she was a guest not too long ago. We had Marie Contrera, a dear friend of yours. She was a guest of ours not too long ago, Kelly Berry. And I just want to tie this together. So, Dorie, let me slide gears for a second, and we'll come back to long game. You run mastermind groups. You are a coach. I've actually had the honor and privilege going through a coaching session for you. I can say firsthand, game changer. You are a tremendous blessing, inspiration, and influence on me. I'll share that firsthand. OMG, Gail, we've got Dorie in the house here, man. This is absolutely awesome. So tagging Amy Port and Michael Port. Thank you, Gail. So, as we talk about you do mastermind groups, you do coaching, you have courses. I'm part of you have a massive community called the Recognized Expert community that you've built up. Alicia is in that group, and the other names I just mentioned. Let's slide in as there's a shout out to Rexers right there. Let's slide into this as we're talking long game. You've done a tremendous job when you took a pivot with your career and went into coaching, and you've built this dynamic community. Okay. For individuals out here with us today and or organizations, manufacturers, what are some tips and advice that you have on how do you build such a vibrant community that you've done truly single-handedly?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It is a great thing to be thinking about, because, whether, whatever field you're in, whether it's speaking and coaching and things like that, or manufacturing, if you can actually build a community so that it's not just disparate individuals who think of themselves as your customers, but a community of people that think of themselves as being part of what you're doing and aligned with it, becomes incredibly powerful. And so, as I've discovered this, as you mentioned, Kurt, starting in 2016, I began the Recognized Expert community. So this has been running now for 6 years. So I've had time to kind of build things up and experiment and learn from the process. But ultimately, the way that I like to think about it is that, in some ways, you as an individual or you as a company are the starting point. You're the kind of focal point that gets people to connect. But what gets people to stay is the relationships that they build with each other. And so the more you can facilitate community building so that you're not even involved in, so that you can essentially be a matchmaker and help people make professional connections, make friendships, find commonalities, the better off it is, because those friendships and those relationships make it valuable. It is just frankly not that interesting for people over time to be part of a community where it's just like, oh, like we're talking about how awesome this one person is. Like, okay, that's nice. But you want to be part of a community where you keep meeting great people who are aligned with you and share values. It is super hard in contemporary society for people to make friends as adults. This is a very hard thing once you leave college, basically. And so if you can provide an opportunity for people to make personal connections and professional connections, even better if they can be both, you are providing a service that people are going to want to flock to, because it is so fulfilling on a lot of levels that are very hard for people to fulfill organically.
Right. I absolutely love that. And you have a great quote, and I'm going to say, I think this was an entrepreneurial, you talk about begin with generosity, and you really hammer about like building that community with generosity. And you talk about Marshall Goldsmith. Now, was Marshall Goldsmith, was that a mentor of yours? Like, share your relationship with Marshall Goldsmith, because I believe you were ranked as the #1 coach of Marshall Goldsmith coaches, which is an extremely impressive honor. You share like your relationship and talk about that generosity with that.
Well, thank you, Kurt. Thanks, Damon. So I did win an award. It was to be clear, it was the #1 communication coach.
Communication coach. Nice.
There are lots of great coaches involved in his community, but that was the particular award that I won. Awesome. So Marshall, for folks who may not be familiar with him, Marshall is a very well-known executive coach. Marshall is in his early 70s now, and he was really kind of one of the sort of earliest people to really attain broad-based awareness and notoriety as an executive coach. And he has become a best-selling author. He has, a number of popular books like What Got You Here Won't Get You There, and Mojo and Triggers, which were all New York Times bestsellers. And Marshall, in recent years, starting to, around the same time I created the Recognized Expert community, I would guess it was like 2016, 2017, Marshall created a community that he calls 100 Coaches. And this is something that I actually wrote about and profiled a bit in The Long Game, because I think it is such an interesting testament to the work that he does and sort of these values. But, he decided, as he was kind of coming into, like a legacy phase, you could say, of his career, that, this is not a guy who needs to earn more money at this point. Like, that's, money is nice, but at a certain point, once you've earned enough, it's like, okay, whatever, that's not thrilling. You want to keep coming up with things that are interesting and meaningful to you. And what was meaningful to Marshall is he wanted to give back. And so he decided that he would create a community. Originally, it was going to be 15 people. Then he said, well, okay, let's expand to 100. Then it expanded even more. Now it's like several hundred people, but it's still called the 100 Coaches community. And his goal was, #1, he would teach people, teach other executive coaches who were younger everything he knows. And he would just kind of create this community at no cost, with the only stipulation being that, as Marshall likes to say, when you're old like me, that you'll do something similar and pay it forward. And I thought that was really lovely and a great way to think, how can we be thoughtful about bringing others together in a generous way?
Right. And creating a legacy like that.
Right.
Like creating a legacy like that. That's brilliant, because there is that point when you get in your career when you just go, I really want to just give the world what I can.
Yeah.
That's
and it's
so cool.
And be able to do it at any age, obviously, younger, still kind of building out your career. But there were, and he shared a quote in your book. It's very hard it's very hard when things are going well to challenge yourself. It's very, and then he talked about, that's when people give up. That's when people quit, is when things are going extremely well. And it's, how do you step up? So with The Long Game, you give a couple great examples about people with, those big, audacious dreams and goals. You share a story of a gentleman, his name's Luis. I'm going to probably butcher his last name, Velazquez.
Yes, Luis Velazquez, a fellow member of the Recognized Expert community.
So you got my back on that one. I love, and I just, I'm like getting chills when I think about this story that you talk about. This gentleman had brain surgery, came out, he was with his wife, and it was right during the Chicago Marathon, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to run this. And the guy just said, if I have the story correctly, can you share a little bit of like what that story was with on that inspiration there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the elements, of course, of playing the long game, as we all know, is about, how do you set these kind of audacious long-term goals for
Right.
yourself and, find it within you to achieve them. And it's hard enough if you have a business goal. I mean, we know that's not easy, but I wanted to take some examples from other realms of life, which I think can be a source of inspiration for this. And it really, in a lot of ways, doesn't get much tougher than having brain surgery. He, literally, this was not even a benign situation. He had brain cancer, and the sort of interesting kind of full circle thing. He had just been diagnosed when he and his wife were on a trip to Chicago, and sort of accidentally they stumbled into the Chicago Marathon. And he's looking all around, and there's all these happy people and happy families, and then you see people who have bibs, and they're I'm running for this person, I'm running for this cause, and it just struck him. He's like, you know what, when I'm through all this, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run this marathon. And so he has his brain surgery, and that's what he says. He tells his doctor, like, all right, I'm going to run the marathon. I'm going to train for that. And the doctor's like, maybe you better scale that back. And, he's like, Luis, like, not to get you down, but you're going to be lucky if you can walk straight again. Like, just don't be, depressing yourself because you're not, marathon ready. But Luis actually used that as the forcing function for him. He was not going to accept it. And he, in terms of like physical therapy, I mean, we all know that physical therapy is not easy when you've been injured, but Luis deliberately pushed himself. He reframed it in his mind. Instead of calling it physical therapy, he called it his marathon training. And they'd tell him to do the exercise 10 times. He'd do the exercise 100 times because he said he was not going to allow this to curtail him. And today he's not just a marathon runner. He's an Ironman. He runs 100-mile races, which, I mean, I'm not doing that. But he's an incredibly impressive guy. He's an executive coach. He teaches at Stanford. He's really an inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, guys, if you're just joining us again, drop us a note. Let us know that you're out there. Please follow Dorie here on LinkedIn. Do yourself a favor. You have to buy the book, The Long Game, Entrepreneurial You. Let's see that. Fly those colors there, Dorie. So again, that's just one story in that book. And again, Luis, if I'm not mistaken, in that book, and again, I'm getting chills like just thinking about, he completed that marathon 1 year later.
Yes.
Finished it from brain surgery. So when you're challenged with it, boy, every day we're facing challenges, struggles, and, wanting to give up. Man, you read a book like from Dorie, The Long Game, and it's just such an inspiration. Don't give up. Don't give up. Let's slide right into another inspirational story from The Long Game, Dorie. Our dear friend Marie in Contreras, she was a guest of ours. David, it was right on your birthday weekend, if you remember that.
It was.
3 months ago, I guess now.
Yeah.
And Marie is just such an amazing woman. I know she's a dear friend of yours, Dorie. She tells a great story about maybe something with Carnegie Hall. I don't know. Can you just share, like, again, having those big, audacious dreams and goals? Can you share that story with Marie that went on there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Marie is certainly a great example of playing the long game. She is, when I first met Marie, she was one of the very first people that I met when I moved to New York City. And at the time that I met her, I had literally never met anyone who did this before. She was a professional full-time jazz musician. She was a big band leader. She was a composer. She, did jazz. She did opera. And I mean, super, super impressive. But as one might suspect, not the most lucrative field in the world, being a full-time jazz musician. And so she was having to take all of these like kind of terrible part-time jobs, to support herself. And anyway, Marie ended up, I encouraged her to start, leveraging some of the other talents that she had developed in the course of being a professional jazz musician. You have to be incredibly entrepreneurial as a musician. And what's interesting is a lot of musicians just kind of limit themselves. They think, well, I'm a musician, that's it. But I suggested to Marie, and she immediately jumped on it, that the skills that she had developed in sort of marketing and social media around her business could actually be very valuable to other people. And so she ended up becoming an entrepreneur. She now has a great agency doing social media for people, booking people on podcasts, booking people on TEDx talks. So she's just grown that enormously. But right at the time, it was sort of the cusp of her business really taking off. She had this idea of playing a concert at Carnegie Hall, which is, the sort of ultimate dream for almost any musician.
Yeah.
That's the big leagues, right?
Yeah.
And she really hadn't started making the kind of, money that would give her security in this process. And so when she first heard about how much it would cost to rent, it didn't sound that bad, so she's like, well, I think I could probably raise that money. And, she's planning it out. And then of course it just keeps like getting worse. You can imagine it's like, oh, well, there's the union and the overtime and, oh, you want it recorded. Oh, you want
The light person. Yeah.
the lights. Yeah, exactly. Oh, you wanted the air conditioning turned on. Oh, we didn't know that.
Yeah.
It ends up being $40,000 to have this one night of music at Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And this was, literally more money than she'd made the entire previous year. She's like, my God, this could bankrupt me. But she ended up pushing through and doing it. And I mean, the good news now, she's such a successful entrepreneur, there would not be a large amount of money for her today. But at the time it felt incredibly risky, but she made it happen. And, one of the things that I talk about in the Recognized Expert, community, the Recognized Expert formula, is the importance of so-called social proof. How do you telegraph your credibility to others? And if you are a musician, one of the most incredible things you can telegraph is, I have played at Carnegie Hall. That means something to people. And so her having done that, having this sort of big goal that she was able to pull off, continues to have residual benefits as, she continues in her musical work. And in fact, we, now collaborate on musical theater together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Damon, if you remember, Marie, she did her TED Talk in a roller derby outfit. And we had a great conversation. Dorie, you've done multiple TED Talks. I'd like to get into that. But I didn't plan this. We didn't plan this, but it's like we did. I do want to share a quote from Entrepreneurial You. And I feel this ties in perfectly as you just described with Marie. You can be talented and well-regarded, but unless you're very deliberate about the choices you make, you may end up earning little for your efforts. Could you share? Let's go into Dorie. Let's talk about you for a little bit. Okay. Like folks know, like, hey, look, I know Dorie Clark. I was just on a call 2 hours ago and I'm like, hey, do you know Dorie Clark? Yeah, she's our guest. She's like, you have Dorie Clark on your program? How did you pull that off? I'm like, well, it's all about the hair, just kidding. So Dorie, thank you for being here today. But talk a little bit. Let's talk about your path, your journey. And you started out. You tell a for folks that aren't aware of your background, hysterical story about you had this little nonprofit. I think in the bike world, if I'm not mistaken. And talk about like what were your big audacious dreams? How do you become that a Wall Street bestselling journalist or bestselling author? How do you get on all these TED Talks? Create this dynamic community. Talk a little bit about your journey and your dreams.
Oh my gosh! Well, thank you very much. Yeah, the job that I had most recently before starting my business back now in 2006 was for 2 years. I was the executive director of a bicycling advocacy nonprofit. So it's it may sound like a very big leap, but interestingly enough, I actually saw a lot of commonalities. I probably would not have the career I have today if it were not for running that bike group, because running this tiny little nonprofit, we were a staff of 3, you have to be so incredibly entrepreneurial in your thinking, just like so scrappy. So, how can we get it done? Where can we beg, borrow, and steal? It really, because your back is against the wall, it forces this kind of creativity and a willingness to do everything because you have to do everything. It's not like you can say, oh, well, I'll just let him do it, because there's no him there to do it. So you got to figure it out. So that was actually really excellent training for me. But yeah, broadly speaking, I mean, I started out with this business and I was just, scrapping to get work from people that I knew, connections that I had from previous jobs, just like you kind of, I mean, like anybody, right? You take what you can get. You take the gig for like $300. I did PR for this Irish guy's folk music album. He gave me like $200 in a paper bag. Like literally, that was like one of my early jobs.
You still have a paper bag?
Immortalized.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I just want to continue on that. So as you were kind of like building things up, I believe your first book was Stand Out. Do I have that correct?
The first one was Reinventing You.
Reinventing. Okay, I have that backwards. So Reinventing You. So just talk about how, if somebody's out there like, man, this is music to my ears, Dorie. I know you. I've been following you. Maybe they have a similar type path that they're looking to pursue. How can somebody reinvent themselves? Playing the long game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, ultimately, when it comes to reinventing yourself into any, kind of career, if you want to change careers or if you just want to if you love manufacturing and you're like, you know what, I want to reinvent my brand in manufacturing because people aren't necessarily appreciating the full spectrum of what I bring to the table. So let's, how do we turn up the light on that? There's a few things that we can do. I mean, the first one is to take honest stock of where we are now and to really try to understand that. And that, is easier said than done, right? We all have a lot of blind spots around us. And so I actually have in Reinventing You, I suggest this super quick kind of, back of the envelope exercise that can be helpful, which is you can go to about, I usually like to say about a half dozen people because that's a reasonable enough cross sample. But you ask them, if you had to describe me in only 3 words, what would they be? And, make sure you write them down so you don't forget, et cetera. Now, this is obviously very quick. This is not a heavy lift to ask people to do this. And some people, they say, well, they're not going to tell me anything I don't already know, blah, 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 blah. And, this is true. If you are reasonably self-aware, you're probably not going to literally hear words that you're like, oh my God, I never knew, right? You probably know it. But the reason that this is valuable is that the thing that most of us have no idea about, the thing that most of us, we literally would have no way of knowing this is what is it that other people think is most distinctive about us? What is most memorable about us? That's the thing that we don't know. What do other people see as most singular? And by finding that out, it begins to give you clues about what's your competitive advantage, what's different about you. And that becomes a force that you can sort of use to drive, and you lead with that. And it helps kind of guide you into your future directions. The other, quick tip that I'll just share, if you're looking to reinvent yourself in some way, is really think of it almost as a kind of PR campaign, because you have to keep reminding people. It's very easy for them to forget, to kind of go back to their previous assumptions about you. And so, you can do things like use social media, for instance. If you want to be known as like the innovation guy, well, make sure you're sharing articles about innovation and posting your takeaways and talking about things in your conversations with people. Make sure that, periodically you're bringing things up, oh, what have you been doing lately? Oh, I just read this really great book about innovation. I was particularly struck by A, B, and C. Just remind people in subtle ways so that it sticks.
Right. I absolutely love that, guys. So
Awesome.
Again, I think we're coming in the top of the hour. So if anybody's just joined us, we're 2:00 Eastern time right now. If you're just starting out with us, we're here with Dorie Clark. Boy, follow her on LinkedIn. You need to, I beg you, invite you, welcome you. You have to grab her books, Long Game, Entrepreneur You. She has a whole slew of books. You have a weekly, you're on Newsweek weekly. You've had like Seth Godin, Marshall Goldsmith. You've had some just dynamic guests that you have on your show. I want to pull in, we have some great folks here in the crowd. Again, drop a note here to Dorie. Damon, pull up this question here from Alicia. I haven't read it really here. So one of the lessons I resonate with the most in Dorie's book, The Long Game, is the importance of making white space in your calendar. Can you talk about that? The importance of making white space. How about that one, Dorie? Thank you, Alicia.
Yes, Alicia, thank you for bringing that out. That's exactly right. In The Long Game, I divide the book into 3 sections, and the entire first section is about this concept of how to create more white space. Because the truth is, all of us would like to be strategic. We think, generally in our culture, we think this is a good idea. Yeah. But the truth is, most of us don't do it. Most of us just, it's like lip service. And the reason is that we never give ourselves / allow ourselves / proactively claim the space that we need so that we have any bandwidth to be strategic. It's not that it takes huge amounts of time to be strategic. I'm certainly not saying like, oh, everyone needs to go, off and, meditate for 6 months, but you need a little time. You need a little bit of mental peace in order to be asking the right questions. And most of us just frankly never have that because we feel so drowned and so far behind. And I think that that's really frustrating. That's really problematic. And so ultimately, we need to be really vigilant about guarding that space and getting better at that muscle, because it is only going to get harder for us as we get more successful. Nobody tells you this. We have to kind of learn it on our own and enforce it. But as you get more successful, it's a good problem to have in some ways, but you are going to have more people clamoring for you and more demands in your time. And if you keep the same criteria as you had previously, you are going to very rapidly get yourself in trouble, because you will not have time to pursue your independent agenda. You're only going to have time for what other people are asking you to do. And so this is where we really need to flip the switch. And every year, as we get more successful, we have to get tighter and tighter with our eligibility criteria of what is allowed to go on our calendars.
And this is so critical. And if you're in an organization or your business gets larger, you need to take more and more of the white space time, because your thoughts are what really drives your entire organization. And if you don't take that time to think of the new ways, put up the big goals and the ways you want to take the company, your company just stagnates and sits in that and really it's not stagnating, it's beginning to die. It's what stagnation is. But that's incredible. So I'm not crazy, and I'm not crazy that I just block out times in my calendar that I don't even know what I'm going to do.
That's right, man. That's what we should all be doing. We got to take a page from you, Damon.
That's
don't do that.
Fantastic. So, and Elisa gives a little mic drop. So, Dorie, that was absolutely phenomenal. I like to dig a little further there. So you do an amazing job. Again, guys, if you're just starting out with us here, Dorie has multiple TED Talks. I'd like to hit those in a second here. You just, thank you. We were so blessed and fortunate to have you spoke at Temple University on Wednesday. Did an amazing job, just dynamic. We had a record crowd at Temple University. Thanks to our dear friend, Dorie. She always attracts a big party. You talk about the one-on-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. I think, is this a good time? Could we segue right into that? So, even if you're an individual, consultant, entrepreneur, solopreneur, like many folks here today, or even you're like, hey, wait, I'm part of an organization. I'm part of a Fortune 500 company. I'm a small manufacturer. This is totally relevant. Could you explain like this one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many, if you could?
Yeah, absolutely, Kurt. Always a good time to talk about this. So this is a key part of my book, Stand Out, which I wrote a few years ago. And the basic idea, the subtitle is how to find your breakthrough idea and build a following around it. We all know that, we live in this very noisy, crowded world, that it's not easy to get your message heard. And so the book was really exploring the question, how do we do it? If we have something that we care about, whether it's, a product, a service, an idea, a cause, how do we get other people to hear it and care? And so broadly speaking, what I developed as a framework, as a way to think about this is, as you were alluding to, we all start with one-to-one communications. We then hopefully go to one-to-many and then many-to-many. And what this means in practice, everybody sort of starts at one-to-one. If you have a new idea, you need to be testing it, right? You need to test it with customers. You need to talk to your friends about it. You need to be like, hey, do you think this is a good idea? Like, am I crazy here? Or hey, customer, I have this thing I might be able to do for you. Would you like that? You sort of test the market and see, you refine it. You begin to get some product market fit. Okay, great. Seems to be going well. Once you have that, hopefully, if you want it to scale, and, a lot of people don't do this, but this is the part that needs to happen, is there's only so far you can get one-to-one, right? I mean, and unless, your customer somehow is the best connected person in the world, they can't tell enough people to fill your practice. It's just not going to happen. So you need to be more exponential. And that's where one-to-many comes in. And it's about thinking through, how can you magnify your reach? And that involves things like, okay, could you give speeches about what you're doing? Could you appear on podcasts? Could you do live streams like this? Could you, whatever, there's a million things. Could you write an article? Could you write a book? But it's somehow making your ideas accessible publicly to people that don't know you personally. And that's how you can really grow the scope of what you want. And hopefully, the thing that every business owner wants, which is to have people come to you that you don't even know. That's, like victory there. But then there's a third level, and this is like the ultimate victory. Not a lot of people get here, but this is the holy grail that we're seeking. And it's what I call many to many. And that is where you might not even be in the room. You might not even be involved in this. It's not that you're, having to write the article or whatever. It's that your idea has gained so much traction and has enough of a following that other people independently are telling their friends. They're having conversations. There's communities perhaps that are formed around your idea and what you're doing, so that it becomes not necessarily about you, although certainly it does benefit you and your idea because they've taken it on as something that they care about themselves.
Man, I absolutely love this. And so even like, say the manufacturer that's out there, like, hey, I'm a, 30, 40 person in plastic injection molder or, circuit board maker. And, what does this say? We're the best kept secret. What does this have to do with me? But exactly what you're saying is, how can we get that internal champion, that internal cheerleader at that customer? This is not my example, but I absolutely love this. Somebody called it like the Trojan horse. Like, you need that Trojan horse to enter into that customer, and people spill out and they're like, man, we have to do business with ABC. Dorie, what I'd love to do is in 2006, you decide you leave the nonprofit world. I know you had some political aspirations in early career. You decided to plunge into entrepreneurship. As you plunge in, did you have any idea, like, that you would get here, like where you are today? As like this one-to-one or one-to-many, many-to-many, like, was it a long, what was that process like for you? Because a lot of folks never get there. You were able to get there. Were you, our friend Gail, who's on the program, a huge raving fan of yours, by the way. She always talks about being curious. Were you curious? Were you hungry? Like, what took it? What would you credit for you to get where you are now?
Well, thank you. It's a kind question. I think, ultimately, we always, it's become sort of a cliche now, right? That, like, children born today, 60% of children born today will have jobs that haven't even been invented, and I mean, I'm sure that's true, but, it's interesting. I mean, if you look at it one way, the things that I'm doing are things that I probably could have anticipated. Like, I was interested in writing. I was interested in doing interviews. I was interested in, consulting and offering advice in some capacity. Also, the form that a lot of these things take, I couldn't have anticipated. I mean, doing a weekly live stream show for Newsweek. I mean, it's like, okay, video on the internet, like, wow, like 20 years ago, that was a sketchy prospect indeed.
Yes, exactly.
It's like the record that keeps skipping, like, no, would not have anticipated that.
Right.
But, I think ultimately, like a lot of people, it really just starts with a question of putting one foot in front of the other. I mean, ultimately, what has become, I think, in some ways, my signature idea, you could say, is around this question, both for individuals and for companies, of how do you break through? How do you get your ideas, your message heard in this very noisy world? And the reason that I've gained expertise in that is that I had to study it very, very closely and carefully, because if I did not solve it for myself, I would not have been able to have a business that was a going concern. So I needed to figure it out in order to crack the code so that I could support myself. But I think, the only difference maybe is that I sort of, once I figured it out and it felt like, wow, this was sort of needlessly opaque and confusing, I wanted to share the information with other people because, I very much am a firm believer that we are not competing with other people. I mean, sometimes people have a little bit of a scarcity mindset that they want to, like, pull the ladder up after them. They're like, well, I don't want other people to know that I had to work hard to get it. Why should I give it away or whatever? But I mean, the truth is, it's not fair that so many of the systems are set up so that, outsiders, quote unquote, don't ever have access to that information. That you would only ever get access to the information if somehow you're, like, born into it, or somehow you get to be friends with the person who whispers it in your ear. I mean, that's how we get, like, just skull and bones crap. And, that's not the society that I want to live in. If we really want to make things fair, people need equal access to information. Now, it's true, there's a lot of people that are lazy and they won't do anything with that information. But for the people that are willing to work hard, I really want there to be an even playing field. I think that's the world that I want, is that if you're willing to work for it, that you should have the opportunity to do so. And so I've been really trying to disseminate that as best I can.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Moment of silence, Dorie.
Yeah.
We're all right, guys. It's like lunchtime-ish wherever you are. Let's just savor that one for a minute there. Dorie, dude, that was like drop the mic.
Breathe it in.
I want to talk about your TED Talks for a second, but Anna has a great question here, Damon. I don't know if you could pop that one up here real quick. I just caught that.
Oh yeah, this is something that I see people fighting with in business every day. You get some success, and then it's just like,
how can the comfort of stagnation, boy, that's
outweigh the desire for change? It just happens to some people, and it's sad to say, but you see the most talented people.
That ties in with a quote that we mentioned from Marshall earlier. So, Dorie, what's your thoughts on that question?
Yes, well, it's a great one, and hi to Anna, nice to see you there. She actually attended in person my most recent TEDx talk in Boston, so I got to meet her there. Speaking of TEDx talks,
perfect timing, awesome.
Yeah, okay. Nice. So yes, I like, and it is very poetic, right? The comfort of stagnation. I think that it's really important for people to be honest with themselves, and if someone is legitimately happy with wherever they are, whether, where they are is they're working at McDonald's or they have a 6-figure business, like, great, God bless. We should all be able to run our lives the way that we want, optimize for the things that we want. That's wonderful. But a situation that I think is a very sad one is that, again, regardless of where we are, whether we're working at McDonald's or having a 6-figure business, if you find yourself over time repeatedly saying, oh, well, I wish I could do this, but blah, 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 blah. Or I tried to do that, but blah, 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 blah. It's like, we don't need any more ancient mariners in the world. We don't need people complaining there's an albatross around their neck and not doing anything to cut the albatross off their neck.
Yep.
And so it's like put up or
just
shut
keep
up.
Keep it going.
Yeah, you gotta. And I've gone through periods of like that for my life too. For a long time, I was like, wanting to write a book, thinking about writing a book, and then the truth was, I just got disgusted with myself. We all have to be honest enough to get disgusted with ourselves. Be like, you know what? Do it or don't do it.
Yeah, then just keep going with that, because man, it is. And this guy just Kurt, another moment. Another moment.
And by the way, Damon, Dorie, I think it was pre-COVID. You were working on some improv, were you not? Do I have that correct?
I took stand-up classes. I did improv in college, though. You're right.
Okay, yeah, nice. All right, stand-up classes. That's what it was. I knew you. All right, so stand-up classes, little ping pong classes. So, man, you are really well-rounded. Let's talk about a few of your TED Talks. It's not like when somebody lands a TED Talk, that is a monster. You've done how many now?
I've done 4 TEDx's.
4 TEDx's. If I have a couple of these topics, the real reason you feel so busy and what to do about it, finding your breakthrough idea, future-proof your idea, how to build a following around your ideas. And again, thank you for speaking at Temple this week. That was your topic there, was how to build a following around your ideas. Share a little bit about, if anybody out there is like, boy, TED Talk, I would be honored. I would love to do a TED Talk. Marie talked about it on a program when she was on a couple months ago. Just could you share your experience on TED Talk, what it's done for you personally, what it's done for your business?
Yes, absolutely. So it is a great opportunity. I mean, to be able to do some kind of a TEDx talk, because I think there's a couple of things. One is it is a real forcing function, to be able to say, look, you've got X number of minutes, like the max is 18, although they encourage it to be less. So let's say you've got 8 minutes, you've got 12 minutes. Give us your best idea and distill it in a way that's useful to other people. This is really like an existential challenge, right? This is very difficult for a lot of people. And so I think that having to be forced to think that way, like, my God, what is my best idea? How do I make it useful? Is kind of a useful way to force ourselves to step up into being the kind of person that we want to be. So that's really great. And then additionally, I would say, for anybody that's interested in speaking, professionally speaking, certainly speaking for money, but, also perhaps speaking as a vehicle for promoting your business, it's a really great calling card, because while it is true that not every TEDx lives up to this. Theoretically, they all have to sign an agreement that the TEDx talks will all be recorded and that they're doing a multi-camera shoot. The video is very important to this. And so usually what happens is that you will get super high quality video of you talking. So if you're looking for something that's a video calling card for years into the future, if you're like, hey, I want to get more speaking gigs, you now have an excellent piece of collateral that you can send to people and say, hey, if you want to know if I'm any good, watch this. And it makes it a heck of a lot easier.
Right. That's fantastic. And I think if I had this correct, I think your last one was only like 7 minutes, maybe 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah, just under 8. That's right.
Like 7 and change. Yeah. And so that was fantastic. Love your topics there. So you've built up, I wanted to share, I had a quote here that let me get organized here. All right. I want to come back to that big dream topic that we were talking about earlier. Okay. So again, guys, if you're just joining us here, we're here with Dorie Clark. Follow her on LinkedIn. You need to buy, where's that book, Dorie? Where's the long game? You got to
where is it? Where is it? It's right here.
Coincidence there. It's right there, guys. You have to buy The Long Game. You have to buy Entrepreneurial You. I wanted a question that I was dying to ask you. There it is, Entrepreneurial You. You've got Standout, Reinventing You. So just Wall Street bestselling journalist or bestselling author here. So guys, one question that we talked about earlier was the big dreams. We talked about Luis, brain surgery, brain cancer, fights through, sets a big dream and runs a marathon. Okay. Maybe yours is a TED Talk. Maybe yours is writing a book. Maybe yours is, whatever it might be, parenting, whatever it is in life, you're with your significant other, right? Set that big dream. Dorie, do you see a common thread on folks you coach, you coach the elite, you coach with wonderful, high level, hugely successful entrepreneurs. I know multiple, folks that are under your umbrella. What common thread do you see with folks that break through and hit those big dreams compared to the folks that have big dreams and just don't quite get there? Do you see a common thread of the folks that break through compared to the folks that just don't quite hit that dream?
Yeah, it's a great question to ask, Kurt. I mean, I'll give 2 answers. The super obvious one is, there are some people that, are just, they don't do the work, and that is very obvious.
Yeah, right.
But nonetheless, it is a big factor in people not succeeding. Yeah. But among people who are willing to do the work, I would say that actually the biggest challenge, the biggest impediment that I see is that they sometimes have the attitude of, yeah, but I've already done that. And it becomes almost like a little bit of a mantra, right? Because basically that's, it's sort of like the know-it-all disease. And if you are trying to get better, for those people, I'm sure they sort of experience it as like, wow, why is it that everybody around me is such an idiot and they keep telling me things I already know? They keep telling me things I've already done. Yeah. But the problem, if like you are their coach, is it's like, oh my God, like you did it once. Like I need you to do it like a freaking 100 times. Don't you get it? And they're like, well, but, and so it's, I think honestly, a willingness to listen and to actually place trust in the people that you have vetted to give you guidance is probably the most important thing, because if you kind of hold back because you think you know better, you're going to resist.
Yeah. All right. Another moment of silence there, Dorie. We're just gonna savor that one for a second. So I love that you talked about trust. Surrounding yourself with high level folks that can help you hit those dreams. Dorie, I want to be mindful of your time. I know, man, I could talk to you all day. First off, thank you. Thank you. I cannot express what this has meant for everybody here. Another might be the last. Maybe
I've got one question I want to get in if we can.
Hit it right now, Damon. Hit that question.
Well, you're talking the long game, and what I see, when you're talking to an executive at Google or Microsoft, and they have to play the short game, being in a publicly traded company. It's so hard to be a high level executive and play the long game anymore because everybody wants immediate results. How do you help them get through that? Because it's like the temptation to do the quick over the right long game is so imminent.
You're 100% right, Damon. I mean, this is a big problem. And the truth is, it is easier if you are an entrepreneur or if you're working in a privately held company for you to be able to do this, because you might have self-imposed pressure. You might have pressure from a boss, but you don't necessarily have pressure from the world that's cracking down on you. If you are an executive at a publicly traded company, there's an enormous amount of pressure. This is why it's a tiny minority now, but there are some companies that refuse to provide earnings guidance. There are some companies like, notably Jeff Bezos when he was running Amazon, who I think really is the exemplar of long-term thinking in modern corporate life, who, literally every year when he released his letter to shareholders would reattach the first letter to shareholders when Amazon went public. And in that first letter, he's like, don't expect profits for a very, 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 very long time, because we are going to be reinvesting them. And that is our strategy. And that is what we're doing.
Right.
And you have to beat the drum. You have to control that narrative.
Yeah.
If you are a mid-level executive, you really have, frankly, very little control. You can try to influence the people around you. You may just have to suck it up and deal with it and try as best you can to play the long game in your own life. But wherever possible, I think we need to sort of fight the power against this, because it's incredibly deleterious. And if we are going to have big, powerful, profound long-term results, we need to start planning now. You can't snap your fingers.
Awesome. Again. Thank you.
We're just, oh my God, this is so good. Guys, do me a favor. If you miss any of this, please go back, hit rewind. You can like just fast forward over me and Damon, just like skip but just listen to every word that Dorie just said. This was just pure gold. Dorie, you are such, oh my goodness, I can't express what you've meant to me. Guys, please check out Dorie Clark's website. She is a coach. She has a recognized expert community. If you just got a sliver of what Dorie delivers on a monthly, regular basis, if this inspired you, and I can't imagine it didn't, if this inspired you, you would love join her her group. Check out her website. Dorie, this might be my last. I have like 10 more questions, but I'll narrow it down. We opened up with, who was your hero growing up? Man, dude, that was like such a great answer. James Bond was, if you guys missed that, super fast. Let's talk about today. Who inspires you today? You've done an amazing job. You've had wonderful success, boy. And when you and I've talked, if you remember, one of the last questions I asked you and I had a coaching session. I'm like, Dorie, where do you see yourself? What's your 5-year vision, your 5-year plan? Man, you laid it out and it was just so inspiring. My question to you, who inspires you today? What keeps your foot on the pedal?
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate it. I can tell you that for whatever reason, lately I've been on a little bit of I'm always on a reading binge, but lately I've been on a reading binge. I will call it classics of baby boomer thought. That's how I would describe it. Yep. I think that, this is not the most flattery thing about me, but like when I was growing up, as a Gen Xer, there was so much in the press about baby boomer. Like everything was about, well, baby boomers this and baby boomers that. And it was like almost intolerable. I'm like, just like screw these people in their spiritual journeys. Like, come on, just like get over it. Like I couldn't deal. Right. But now that I am a grown up, I actually am sort of looking back and I'm like, oh, actually they did do some interesting things. Yeah. And so I'm now trying to avail myself of this wisdom. So I have been reading most recently, respectively, a biography and an autobiography of Stuart Brand and Ram Dass. So that is what I've been spending my time with lately.
Okay, awesome. And I think on Temple, I caught your program in Temple. Your mother, Gail, do I have that correctly?
Yeah.
I believe she's retired. Did you say she retired recently? Did I hear that correctly in your program?
Not exactly recently, no. But boy, she's spending a lot of time learning Spanish. That's what she's spending. Yeah,
that's what it was. Right. So I did. Yeah. I know you love talking about your mom, and so I just want to give a little shout out to Gail today. So yeah. So if she catches this, hey, we're sending our love out to Gail.
Oh, thank you, Kurt.
Dorie, any last words? Any last words of wisdom? This was just fire. This the chat box is just absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Everybody's sending their thanks and love to you. Any last thoughts that you want to share with anybody, where they can connect with you? Anything that you want to share?
Well, thank you so much. It's great to get to spend the afternoon with you fellas and all the wonderful folks tuning in, our Rexers and our new friends. If folks want to learn more, I mean, as you mentioned, Kurt, they can get the book, The Long Game. It's on Amazon and lots of other places. There's also a long game strategic thinking self-assessment, which people can get for free. It's sort of a reflection tool that you can download, and just go to DorieClark.com/longgame.
Yep. That's awesome. And I tell you, when you go to Dorie's website, check out the testimonials. I would keep her another hour just rattling off all the wonderful testimonials, the way that you've changed lives and just the footprint that you're leaving behind. And again, one of the first things that we talked about in the program today is you talk about just giving that generosity, giving with value, that authentic belief that you have of just helping people move the needle. And boy, you just eat, drink, breathe, and sleep it. And so we salute you. We thank you. So Damon, let's wrap up on that one, man. So everybody, round of applause, man. Just jump out of your chair. Give a round of applause for Dorie Clark in the house. Dorie, thank you. We send our love and blessings to you. We appreciate you. Thank you for what you do for the business community, for Rexers. Damon, take it away, dude.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Thanks, everyone, for getting in the chat, putting your comments in, telling us where you're from, supporting Dorie, getting out there. Thank you for being here today. And want to thank Dorie Clark, myself, and just say, wow. Go back and rewind this thing. Listen to it a couple times. There's some gold in there. Go out and get her books, not only The Long Game, but the other books that she's put out, because it's going to help you stand out, reinvent yourself, and get you on the right path. So for today, we're finishing up the Manufacturing E-commerce Success Series. We will be back again next Friday with another interesting topic. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Ed. Hang out one.